Welcome to Let's Go Live. I'm Juju Mara, and I have with me sci-fi, fantasy, and paranormal romance author, Stacey L.P. Welcome back, Stacey.
Hello! I'm so happy to see you again on live.
Thank you. I am happy to have you back. I can't believe it was only like 4 months ago because I was thinking it was longer ago. I
Right?
know. I think like time to me sometimes it like goes by really fast and other times it doesn't.
I have no idea what time is it.
You're just holding on, huh?
Yep.
Okay, so
Hoping
when we last talked, you had been laid off, which was, like a journey there. And then you were returning back to work. So have you officially returned?
I have. I started a new day job and I'm not going to say what it is, but it's a cool place.
Yeah, no names.
And I've been able to work in writing too. So, well, work in writing as in I just don't sleep anymore.
Well, that's kind of what I want to discuss because I know when you're a full-time author like me, you set your own schedule and I get a lot of questions about structure. But I think it's harder when you have a full-time job, kids, family, etc., to fit in the writing. And I think it's more reflective of what people's journeys are. So can we start there if you don't mind and just tell us like what does your writing schedule look like now that you've returned back to
Yeah.
work?
So my goodness, it is chaotic for sure. So typical days, as long as no fires happen during the day, I work from around 8 a.m. to 5 p.m. And after that point, I spend some time with my kids, do dinner, do bedtime, and then I get to write.
Do
So
you work from home?
I do work from home. Yeah,
Oh,
that's
okay.
so at least I don't have to commute.
Okay, stop right there. Are you working at home with children at home this summer?
They're not with me, but they are home.
Oh, okay. So let's break that down for those that are in your exact situation, because mine have been home with me for a while, and I tell you, we get nothing done around here.
Yeah, my husband's a stay-at-home parent, so they're with him during the day, but let's be real, like I had to have one of those like hotel locks on the back of my office door because my oldest figured out how to pick locks. So I needed
Well, Houdini,
one.
that's crazy. So he stays home with them. But
Yeah.
let's be honest, like they always want their mamas.
Mhm. Oh yeah. It's nice when like they'll slip a little note under the door, like a cute little picture, but most of the time they won't break in. Most
Like
of the time.
that's all I have time for is a note under the door. Okay, so obviously you have a very short commute. So you wake up, you and the kids get, I'm sure you have your family time in the morning, and then you head into work, which is just down the hall with your hotel locked door.
Yeah.
But then that is your concentrated time to work. It's not as though you're like being able to write and work or do other things. You're dedicated
It's
to that the rest
just
of the night.
work.
Yeah.
Yeah. So I'm doing my day job during the day, and then once the kids go to bed at night, I come back in my little office, switch out the computers. And honestly, my writing time has been between like 8 to 9 p.m. until anywhere between midnight and 2 a.m., depending on
My God.
how it's going.
Girl, that's like two full-time
Yeah.
jobs.
Gotta fake it so you make it.
Okay, so how are you doing this? Is it like a sugar, caffeine, slow drip to get you through? Or how, for those that are listening that want to be able to write and then say, like, I don't have the time?
So I have insomnia.
That's so honest. I love that answer.
So honestly, like even when I was in between jobs and not working, I did find that at night was when I tended to be the most productive. I don't know what like I'm definitely a night owl. It has to be. Because even like when I would have the studio all or this is part studio, hence the musical instruments behind me.
I was gonna say it's super cool for those that are, yeah, if you can't see her, and we can talk about that in a minute, what's behind you. So
Yeah, so even when I had the space during the day without a full-time job, I it's still really hard to like focus and sit down to write. So for some reason, I just needed to be dark out, and that's when the words start coming out. So it's kind of worked in my favor, aside from the lack of sleep. That's just forever chasing sleep.
Oh, I'm sure. I would have to like take my lunch breaks to sleep and then just eat as I work. I'd have to do that.
Right?
But I think that's a lot of when you are a writer, determining what kind of writer are you? Do you write in the morning? Do you write better over your lunch break? Do you write better in snippets, or are you a night owl writer?
Yeah, yeah. Like I even when I was getting towards the end of writing my second book, like there, over the weekend when it got down to like crunch time,
Hmm.
there were nights where I just like worked straight through the night and then slept through like half the day. Like
Gosh.
that's just when it worked.
And but you didn't know that about yourself immediately, right? So I think when you said you were laid off, you had to kind of figure out a structure. And I
Yeah.
know when we have school, the children are in school, their structure overlays onto us, right? We have the car line or bus stop and then car line or bus stop in the afternoon, right? So that forces a structure.
Yeah.
And then when you're in, working for someone else, that definitely is a structure, else you get let go. But now, so you've made the transition from, being your own boss back to working for someone and still being your own boss. How do you like it?
It's chaotic. I like each part separately. It's just when it's all together in one day, it's a lot. So I find that over the last couple of months, a lot of what I've been trying to figure out is really like what are my limits? Because
Mm-hmm.
obviously I can't be up until 2 a.m. every morning.
No.
So a lot of what I've been trying to figure out is like working in, okay, well, there are going to be later nights where I can stay up and like feel fine in the morning, but like it can't be every night. So finding that balance between what's sustainable
Yes.
and what's healthy. I mean, I don't think any of it's healthy, but healthier.
I think that's fair to say, though, because there's a lot of people that are juggling multiple interests and also multiple jobs. Let's be honest, in this economy, shoot.
Hmm.
And so I think it's important to try and just figure that out because we don't want to burn out. And I know that you're a mama, you're married, you have, you're the breadwinner. And so how do you make sure that you don't burn out when you still have to like handle business, but also chase your dreams?
Yeah, I've I've kind of like created touch points for myself to like check in and be like, okay, like how am I actually doing?
Oh, I like that. Explain more.
Yeah. I've kind of always done that because I've had like depression and anxiety my whole life. So I always have to like kind of take that inner look and be like, okay, like what's going on right now? Do I have to take a pause? Do I have to like take stuff off of my plate? And like I've become pretty self-aware over the years in terms of checking in with myself, but it's something very conscious that like I have to remind myself to do because it's so easy to get caught up in just going, and then by the time you're burnt out, like it's too late. So I do try to like check in with myself pretty regularly, and also setting limits for myself. So like this night I'm just going to hang out with my husband and then go to bed. Or like this weekend, I'm just going to hang out with the kids, and kind of breaking it up like that so I don't have too much all at once. And then I can also look forward to writing too, because it feels like a reward.
That's just sweet. Well, I'm so sorry that you've had to deal with depression and anxiety. I have many people close to me in my life that have had to do that, and it is brutal. And it's almost just like half day by half day or an hour by an hour. And so a lot of people don't understand that. They think like depression is just this big long void, but it's not. Not for everybody.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's definitely something that I feel like comes in cycles or season. Well, definitely seasons, but like cycles where that's another thing that like it just kind of creeps up
Mhm.
on you
Mhm.
by the time you realize like you're in a depression spiral. Half the time it's like, oh, like, how did I get here? But yeah, it's definitely something that I've learned to kind of work through just throughout my entire life, and lots of therapy and conversations.
No, I think it's great because you're right. We just keep saying, oh, well, I'm tired, or oh, I'll get more sleep, or oh, I'm just in a rut. So we use that, I think sometimes almost denial to ourselves as to like where we're really at. And then you said until one day it just hits you and you're like, I have no motivation to do the things that I love.
Yeah, yeah. And like there is a line there too, because people normally get tired, you know?
Sure.
I think it's being able to recognize those signs like, okay, like this is a little bit more than tired. Like I don't want to do anything. I don't want to like go outside. So yeah, I think it's a lot of like self-awareness just to keep track of.
Well, I like that you said that you have check-ins and touch points with yourself. I think that's brilliant for those that, even if they don't battle anxiety or depression in the moment, I think it's always good because total holistic approach, we're supposed to be like, how am I physically? How am I mentally? How am I emotionally? How are my relationships around me? Are they impacting me positively, negatively, etc.?
Definitely.
Okay, so how do you then? You said you went through therapy for this. Does any of that translate into like your books or your characters? Or I'd imagine you've learned so much, it becomes who you are. And how could it not go to your characters?
Yeah, I'm so happy you brought this up because yes. In Afterglow, I think Afterglow is a book where, you know, it's post-apocalyptic. It's taking place after all of these traumatic events. And one thing that I do explore in the book is that trauma and then dealing with like the after. And one of my characters has had anxiety like before the whole
End of the
alien
world.
happened and after. So I had a really, it was really interesting kind of exploring that through another character that obviously was a little bit different than I was. And like taking those experiences and like seeing them almost through the eyes of someone else. Um, and I realized like as I was writing, like my characters almost started like counseling each other. Actually, one
Oh.
a psychologist, so that worked out really well. But I found myself putting in a lot of those like little tips and tricks that I've learned like over the years into how my character would talk himself through his anxiety and like be able to work through those difficult situations, which reading it back like, whoa, I really did learn a lot in therapy, huh?
Pat on the back to me. But I think that's so relevant nowadays because we struggled. I know, the biggest crisis was when we were all in COVID together. But I feel like there's so many lingering effects. People just think, oh, because COVID's over, mental health is over. And I'm like, not the case at all.
Right. Yeah, absolutely. Like, and especially after those like world affecting events, I think that COVID in particular was something that helped a lot of people to realize like just how serious mental health is because everyone was kind of pulled from their regular routines and cut off from their lifelines. And I think that like at least for some people that I know, like that was the point where they were like, oh, okay, so what I'm feeling probably isn't that normal, but also I'm not the only one feeling it either.
Mhm.
So yeah, that was an interesting time.
It was because people were going to social media, and so you had all the introverts that are like, "This is great, I love it." And so then, if you're an extroverted personality, you're like, well, "What is wrong with me that I'm not enjoying it? That I'm going stir crazy?" Because all these introverts are like, "I could stay in my house forever. I never have to go back." And so you're thinking like pointing the finger at yourself, trying to figure out what's going on.
Yeah.
And at the height of I always feel like COVID was our own like little dystopian era.
Yes, it
And
was.
sales of dystopian books were down during that time because people were like, no, this is like kind of reality, and we were in Texas, so you're in Austin, I'm in Houston. We weren't so locked down, obviously,
Yeah,
because of the political climate here. But
right.
I had friends in like Italy and Spain, New Zealand. And it
Yeah.
was, I mean, super duper lockdown, like super strict. And so I think that's when the mental health really became an issue.
Yeah, definitely. Like, most of my friends are from New York, and
Oh,
I'm
yep.
actually working in New York City during COVID. And I remember one day I had to go to the office building because my work computer was still there, and it was like 2 months we'd been working from home at that point, and I was using my personal computer, and I'm like, this isn't ending, is it? So I had to go in to get my work computer, and my office was just past Times Square by
Yep.
Bryant Park, and the streets were empty. Like there was no one, and it was
Eerie.
so eerie, like so creepy.
Because you never even see that, in New York. I mean, I've been out on the streets. I've been in Times Square at 3 a.m. eating pizza by the slice, and it would be like it's 3 in the afternoon. Like,
Right.
this is a city that never sleeps! Exclamation point. So that had got to be so strange.
Yeah, like there weren't even any cars. Like we didn't really pass many people at all. Like even in cars. It was something.
Do you think an afterglow, because you are on one side of the looking glass, where have anxiety in yourself, and now you're writing a character, is it kind of cathartic? Does it
Yeah.
heal things? Does it help you figure things out and fix things? I hate to use that word fix because it's so.
Yeah, I do think so. Writing for me has always been a way that I would kind of like work through understanding what I was going through. Even before I started writing fiction, I actually used to write a lot of creative nonfiction and poetry, and like I used to write music, and that's very, you put a lot of yourself into that. Obviously, like memoir, but
I mean, Stacey, you and Taylor Swift, y'all are the same. Put yourselves into it.
yes. But yeah, like I noticed that when I started writing Afterglow, like I was still doing the same thing. Like there are definitely pieces of what I have gone through in my life, like worked into a lot of what my characters have experienced. And but like in different ways. Like it's still transformed a little bit, slightly different, but like the lessons that I've learned along the way have definitely worked their ways in there too. And like reading it back, I'm like, wow, like I really have come far from like where I started and where I had to learn this.
I'm
So
sure.
it's definitely a very cathartic experience.
It
Yeah.
has to be. I would imagine at some level you're proud of yourself because you do get to see the growth. And I know sometimes we don't always look back, or
Yeah.
sometimes you're just like, oh, if I could just get to this job, that promotion, that raise, that house, that husband or kid. You know what I mean? We always keep moving that line
Yeah.
up. So when we're always so forward thinking, moving the line up, we never look back to see like how far we've come. Like, oh my gosh, I've already come this far.
Yeah, that's absolutely true. Like, and we were talking about how quick time goes right when this started, and I think that's prime example of it. Like, you don't realize how far you've actually come until you stop for that moment and look back and think like, wow, a lot has happened since X, Y, and Z, and look at where I am now.
I want to switch gears a little bit because I don't want to forget. Tell us what that background is before we talk about the series, the trilogy.
Oh yeah, so I share this office with my husband. He is an audio engineer. So I have a bunch of like a drum kit. There's like a bunch of guitars back there. That's his little like audio production space.
Ooh, okay. I have a question before you
Yeah.
go further. Could he do your
Yep.
audiobooks? Could he voice? He could be the man, you could be the woman.
Well, not so much the voice part for him, but like we do have plans to work on an audiobook once the whole series is finished
Yep.
because we have
All
everything.
the, yeah, I know, but you don't think he'd want to do the character? Maybe he'd be embarrassed. I don't know.
No, not his thing. On the recording side.
I know, but audiobooks, I love them, but they're so expensive as indie authors to produce. It's
Hmm.
thousands. And so I was like, he has all the equipment and you and him could do it. I'd be like, you're doing it.
I do have friends who like to do like voice stuff, so TBD in the future.
You're like, come over Friday night for the next 4 Fridays. Well, that is a pretty cool setup behind you. So that's where you work in your full-time job, and then you also get to work there for writing your books.
Yeah.
Oh, that is so inspiring to be in that creative space with all that energy and creativity going on.
Yeah, and like we've both of us have always been very like very big, and we met when we started a band together. So we've always been very into like music
Yay.
things, and it's nice to have one room that's just kind of dedicated to that space. Like I get so happy every time I'm in here when I get to focus on like my writing.
Of
Not
course.
but like when it's time to write, I'm like, yes, like I'm using the space for what I want to use it for, and like it just feels good.
Well, I think too, when you're around other creative people and other artists, it's like a magic. It's hard to describe, but you know what I'm talking about. You enter that room and it's just like good vibes, and you're like, this is exactly what I'm meant for.
Yeah, definitely.
Okay, so does he help with your story since he's a creative person? He likes to do music and he kind of thinks outside the box.
We, it's more so me talking at him to work through
So no.
plot holes. No, there have been some really great ideas that have come from our conversations, though. Especially when I start to think about some of the more like technical pieces of how things work, like a radio, or we had a very complex conversation about batteries one day. But like he'll poke holes in all of it and be like, okay, well, how are we going to work around this? And it helps to like make the story a little more solid on that part. Alien technology, we don't need to answer. And he's like, but how?
Yeah.
But I do read a lot out loud to him in pieces. Like if I'm working through a particular scene and I'm not sure how it sounds because I've read it so many times in my head.
You go blind to it.
Yeah, so he gets like a lot of pieces of it read out loud. He's reading it like on his own separately, but yeah.
Okay, that's remarkable that he lets you read it to him because there is many, many people that don't like to be read to. Like I always assumed, I always read to my children growing up. They
Yeah.
still love to be read to, but there's a lot of people that don't. It's like a whole thing.
Yeah. I think too it's because I get so excited about it too. Because it's usually those scenes that are either like highly emotional or that make me laugh. And I'm like, is this only funny to me?
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
So I
So,
think it helps too. Like we're very encouraging of the stuff that we create, and I think like that support is really what helps keep both of us like moving forward in the creative space.
huge. It's huge, but that's pretty cute that you commandeer him and force him to listen.
Yes.
He's a good man. He's a good man, Savannah. And that like on from TikTok that oh, I said that out. You know that sound? You haven't heard it?
No.
Oh my gosh, it's so
You'll
cute.
have to send me a TikTok with the sound so I know.
Yeah, it's hilarious. Okay, so take us through where you're at in the series. Oh,
Yeah,
and
so
start with the name of the
oh yeah.
series.
So the trilogy is the Afterglow Rising trilogy. And book 2 is coming out next week. So Friday the 13th, June 13th, we have so Afterglow Rising from the Ashes is the first book, and Afterglow Defiance Ignited is the second book. And this next one is wild.
Okay, how so?
Well, the first book was a lot of like getting to know what the world is like and
Yeah,
getting
world
the
building.
yeah, so it's a lot smaller because we're focusing on a shorter period of time in that book, and there are not as many characters because they haven't really ventured out of this space yet. But book 2 is kind of where that all kind of blows apart.
Nice.
So at the end of book 1, it leaves off on a cliffhanger with a very tense predicament that the characters have to work through. And so they're at this crossroads where they kind of have to weigh like, do we do what's best for the group to keep everyone alive, or do we do what feels right in our hearts? And it's kind of that's kind of a theme that circles back around throughout the entire second book, because my characters are kind of put into these new situations where they're interacting with other new characters that are also in that very morally gray area where it's like, you're a good person, but you sometimes have to do bad things to survive, because that's the choice. And that was really interesting to explore, because there was the like, definitely like not so great people making terrible decisions, but then also characters that people love who have to make a really hard decision that if anyone else were to do it, they'd be like, wow, like that was messed up. Why did you do that? But then you get to know that person and like see how their character evolves. And you're like, man, like I kind of get where they're coming from though. So that was a lot of fun, but very tense.
So tactically, how do you handle that? You know, because you are a very bright, bubbly personality. And so I can't imagine that you would yourself sacrifice anyone for the greater good. But that's exactly what you're saying.
Yeah, I think part of it is being able to kind of separate yourself from the story too. Because since my characters have very defined personalities, so as they're debating these things, I kind of approach it from like, okay, if I am this type of person and these are my values and this is what's important to me, what choice do I make? And I think by having them have those conversations too, it helps you kind of paint that full picture of all of the options that are available in that situation and what people think about going one direction or the other. So I think like being able to kind of tap into not necessarily like a different personality, but like different personality traits and using those motivations to have a bigger discussion, like that's really what helped to build out the story and those conversations between the characters.
So how much do you think you were managing the characters and they were just writing the story and their decisions themselves?
Oh, they absolutely took the story and ran with it. And I tell that to people and they're like, Stacey, you wrote this. I'm like, I did, but I was not in control of what happens.
Yeah, and when you tell people that are not authors that, they're like, what?
Yeah.
It's hard to describe what happens, though.
Yeah. Yeah, because I think we all start out with these ideas of where our plot is going to go. And I do start with an outline. But as I get to writing and the characters are placed in those situations, like as they're kind of working through it themselves,
Yeah.
it changes. And I think that's what's like kind of cool about the whole process is you, as the writer, sometimes you don't know what's going to happen next.
For sure, you're like, don't go through that door. And next thing you know, they go through that door and you're like, what is behind that door?
Right.
And so when you tell people that, they're like, how do you not know what's behind the door? You're like, I don't know. Me and the characters, we discover it together.
Yeah.
So this book, how long did it take you to write this?
So I started writing it, I think, in December. And then I sent it to my editor like second week of April.
So less than like 90 days, 3 months.
Yeah. That's what that breaks down to, I guess.
You're like, that math is mathing.
Like, yep. It felt longer, but yeah.
I know, but that's really, really quick. How many what's your word count or page count?
It ended at around 96,400, I think. So it was shorter than book one, but still like.
Girl, that's over 30,000 words a month.
Yeah.
And you're working and you're married and you have children.
Yeah.
Oh my gosh, when you said you're an insomniac, girl, was not joking.
I think it helps though that like since it is a series, I kind of know the direction that it's going in. Like I have things kind of mapped out to an extent. I've kind of let go on the map a little bit just because this book has taught me that you can have a map, but it doesn't mean you're going to end up at that destination.
Exactly. Well, don't you think too, though, that what's nice about it is you kind of marinate on the story when you're at your full-time job. And I'm not saying you're taking anything away, but sometimes we just get random ideas that just pop in when you're not even in the story, focus on the characters, etc. You know, you can be like folding laundry and all of a sudden you get this idea. So don't you think too that may have helped in that process? Because your brain isn't in it all the time, but yet it still is behind the scenes.
I think so, definitely. And I noticed that too, like during the day, because I couldn't write and because I didn't have the time to write, I kept thinking about it. So like it was still in my head, but I got to kind of like, I guess, explore the different options of where the story could go. So when I did sit down to write, I kind of like had these thoughts that were already kind of swirling around in there. And I was so excited to finally be able to sit down and write that like I was able to be really productive
Well,
in the time that I have.
that's what I was thinking too, because when you have this really tight constraints on you, hopefully, well, not everybody, but a lot of people are like, look I just let the ideas percolate all day. And then when I sit down to write, I'm so much more efficient because I've already decided and made all these decisions. Whereas like some people that write full time, they're like, oh, okay, what's the next thing? And what's the next thing? Because they haven't allowed time because in their manuscript, kind of almost too much.
Yeah. Yeah, I can definitely see that. And like before I got this job, when I could sit down and like write for a full day, I would just keep like rereading everything that I wrote previously and get like stuck there for a little bit because I had to like turn it over in my head to be like, okay, so here's where we're at. There's where we need to get to, but how do we get there? So I think that space like actually helps a lot.
Well, see, I love that statement because it's very encouraging for those people that work full time, but they still want to write a book, or they work full time, they still want to chase their passion. It's still possible.
Definitely.
And I think like, oh, well, I don't have the time, or when am I going to do it? And actually, you can sometimes produce your best product when you're so busy, when you're juggling all the balls in the air.
Yeah, and I'm someone too that I kind of need those wild deadlines because the pressure helps me be productive. Like if I have like I'm working on a novella right now and I just set a date with my editor that like for October to send it to him because I know like if I don't have that deadline, it's just going to sit to the side and I'll be like, oh, yeah, I have these ideas. I'll get to them. But once I have the date locked in, I'm like, I have a deadline. So
Okay, is the novella somewhere in the series, or is it a totally separate project?
yeah, it's so as I was writing book two, there was kind of a side plot between two characters that was alluded to, but since they weren't in the focus for a good portion of the novel, you kind of only heard about it through the other characters, like in summary or like in passing. And this story is like, again, fully built out in my head. I know what happens, but no one else does. And I'm like, I need to tell everyone.
Oh, I see. Isn't that exciting though?
Yeah.
Because you already know you have this project and then you like have an idea that comes out of it.
Yeah. I think that's been the most fun part is like, it also, like, I'm going to end up with so many novellas after the series because it keeps happening.
Well, where does this one fit then in the storyline?
So it happens in the middle of book two.
So will the novella come out next and then book
Yeah.
three? Oh.
Yeah. I'm hoping what I could do is like, since the first book came out November 15th, 2024, it would be really cool if the novella could come out November 15th, 2025.
Yes.
You know, I'm not going to like set a date right now.
That would be cool. But then would you then, so does it time jump from where like, because normally, you know, when you do a series, it's like one, two, three. So is there a time jump to get to the novella and then a time jump back to, you know, the third book?
A little bit. It would, so the time happens simultaneously to the mid portion of the book and where it leave off is kind of a little bit before the end. So it's kind of like you take a step back to see what this other part of the story was. I have to be very vague because I don't want to give anything away.
This
But
point.
a couple of side quests, we'll put it that way.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, so this one side quest, there are a couple characters who are on this separate part of the journey taking care of what they need to take care of. And that's the portion that because I was focusing on other characters, it wasn't at the forefront. But at the same time, in my head, I was there. So that's the portion that is going to be a part of the novella. But I do actually have a couple ideas for two prequels to kind of show what two other characters experienced before they met with a larger group. One of my characters is an emergency room RN, and her story has been in my head since I met her.
Oh, dang.
Yeah, and I just think that would be a really cool exploration after the series to kind of go back to the beginning and see where did everyone start out, what was it like, and then where how did that lead to them ending up where they were at the end of the story too.
Yeah, Amanda in the comments says, yes, I love anniversary releases.
Hi, Amanda.
I always think it's fascinating, though, when authors are able to do the prequel after, because I feel like I've already told the story. And so people were like, what happened before she became an ER nurse? You're like, I don't know. What do you think happened before? So it's fascinating to me that you're like, I already have two people that I want to tell there before, and then the story picks up when they're an ER nurse.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. It's there were a couple settings that I kept kind of going back to in my head when I was thinking of what led to where Afterglow started.
Mm-hmm.
It kind of picks up after the alien invaders have supposedly left the
Yeah.
skies. So most of the characters have experienced this post-apocalyptic world, whereas others are just waking up for the first time and seeing things. But we don't really get to see that before portion where everyone's kind of figuring out, okay, like, what the heck is this thing in the sky and why is it here? What does it mean for us?
Do you think it'll be easier to write because now you know everything, or do you think it'll be harder because you have to tie it into everything you know?
I think it would be easier because a lot of the backstory gets told in pieces throughout Afterglow. Not necessarily this character's story. We don't get as much, but there are a couple scenes where, as characters are getting their memories back, or as they're kind of explaining their situation to a new friend, you get these glimpses into what they have experienced. But since it's kind of a retelling, you don't really get that full impact because it's like they're just telling a story at that point. Whereas, like, to kind of build that world, I kind of started by kind of mapping out those little pieces ahead of time. Actually, a lot, the way that I kind of got to know my characters was I would just start by writing what they experienced before the novel started, and that helps me to like figure out who they are. So when we got to the actual plot, I was like, okay, I think I know these guys. I think I know where they're going.
Okay, that's genius. So that's because you did such good character profiles. That's where you're going to be able to do the prequels.
Yeah.
That is such a smart tip.
Yeah. I didn't intend to do it that way. It just kind of happened.
Like, not intentional. Well, have you read A Court of Thorns and Roses or the Akatar? Because I'm sure you have. You're a fantasy writer also. I
Yes.
feel like her books, like, you know how she has so many side
Yeah.
stories. And so what you're saying is basically you're her, except you're taking these and pulling them out of the big, huge books that hers are and creating your own novellas where she keeps them in. And sometimes you're like, where are we going on this journey? Or like, why are these people important? Because you don't find out until like, I don't know, the last quarter of the book, why it matters about the witches. You know what I mean?
Right.
Mhm.
Yeah. I love that you brought that up too, because like one of the things that I kind of had to fight against with the first book and even this one too was I didn't want to do too much because there is so much that can happen, especially when like I have a pretty large cast and when once they split up, there are all these other things that are happening in the background.
Sure.
I include all of this. It is going to be way too much. And like I really wanted to focus on one specific story because it's kind of what's driving the whole trilogy forward. So I didn't want to lose sight of that main plot, but at the same time I'm like, but these stories are going to be so cool.
Well, no, she has her other series. I can't think of the, you know, their names are like this long, but it's
There's Throne of Glass and Crescent City are the others.
okay. Throne of Glass is the one I'm reading, and I can't tell where it's like she's the mercenary in the beginning. I can't ever remember her name though because it's so long, and I know it's
I know.
Aileen. But that's my point. Like when you get into some of these books, they're great, but they're almost information overload. And
Mm-hmm.
I can see how when you write fantasy, it's hard to like stay within the guidelines or stay within the curbs. Like I just feel like it's this, this canopy of different directions that you can go, and you're constantly having to like course correct, stay on track, course correct, stay on track.
Yeah, yeah. And I think that brings up an interesting point of like the different, I almost call them levels of like sci-fi and fantasy because
Yeah,
I think that I like to call my book entry level sci-fi or light sci-fi because it isn't so heavily focused on like the technology portion or recreating these new worlds, but rather a glimpse into what our world could be if this wild thing happens. And I knew that I kind of wanted to approach it from that angle because I think a lot of people look at sci-fi and they're like, am I smart enough for sci-fi?
for
Like,
sure.
is this accessible? Will I be able to understand what's happening? And there's a lot of
Mhm.
sci-fi that, because of all the different subgenres, like it actually is like pretty easy to read. Like when you think about Divergent, for example, or like
Love it.
Maze Runner, I'm
Yeah.
like that's technically sci-fi, YA, but like still sci-fi. But I feel like those subgenres very often get looped in with fantasy because it's almost easier to digest. And there is a lot of crossover between both of the genres. So,
Oh, sure.
yeah,
I feel like Divergent
a
is a little
lot.
bit more your pattern, where Divergent sticks more to the storyline. Oh my gosh, like George Lucas, that thing gets all over the place, right? Like we talked about. And then when you talk about like Game of Thrones, they had to continue this series because he's so overwhelmed. I think it has like a cast of 1,200 characters, and so he was having to get assistants to help keep the story straight and the kingdoms and all that. And I think that one can just so it's a dichotomy of like Divergent does it really well. These other ones become these massive worlds that they build that even they have a hard time, keeping track of.
Yeah, I think it's so cool though because you kind of get the like I said the different levels. It's like you're going through a video game. Like okay, I'm used to sci-fi. Now I can go to the next level where there's more characters and more world building, and I feel like those stepping stones kind of help to get used to the stories and the world building, and that's where you can get a little bit more familiar with getting used to a million
Well,
characters.
I always think like, what are the tools to keep track of their own stories? Because let me tell you, these readers, they know it all. They remember it all. They make the connections about who was related to who and what year, what century, and all this stuff. And I think sometimes they do a better job than like the authors do at times. And you're thinking, whoa.
Yeah,
So
there's
when,
a lot of people annotate their books to
yeah,
like save those spots, and I'm like, I don't think I could keep up with that. I tried to annotate my own book, but then I just got distracted reading and I didn't get far.
my daughter's a huge annotator. It's the highlights, it's the tabs. I mean, I really get envious because I'm like, I would love to have that patience and discipline. And I think it's such a beautiful product at the end, but oh, I cannot hang in there and do it.
Yeah, like I'm looking at my book and it's just like such a mess. Like there are pages that have text on them and like notes, and then like the corners are bent, and I was practicing spraying the
I was
edges.
gonna say, those purple?
Yeah.
You spray the edges
I
yourself?
did. I haven't perfected it yet, but I have an event coming up June 20th through 21st. I'm actually going to be in Houston for Comicpalooza. So I wanted to spray some edges to bring with me because I think it looks so cool.
Okay, let's stop right there and tell everybody the event, the date, and what your booth. Do you know your booth number yet?
I do, I think.
Oh,
I know it's close to the podcast section. But yeah, so Comicpalooza, it's in Houston, Texas from June 20th through 22nd. I think my booth number is 3037, possibly. But they do have a map and a directory, so if you search for author Stacey L.P, you'll find me.
is that the George R. Brown or is that at Reliant Stadium?
It's at oh gosh, I think it's the
Convention
Brown.
Center?
Yeah.
That's typically where it's at because they have Comic-Con and then they have
Yeah.
Mystique. And so you'll see all the cosplay spill out into Discovery Green, which is that huge park across the street. But like all of downtown ends up turning into like cosplay. It's really cute.
I'm very, very excited.
I've taken my daughter and her little friend years ago. One, there's no parking, so good luck. You know, you have to like Uber everything because there's people everywhere. It's a madhouse, but it is for people watching and creatives and storytelling. It is beyond awesome. Is this your first time going?
Yeah, to Comicpalooza. I went to Big Texas Comic Con in November, I think, just as like an attendee.
Yeah.
And I handed out like my bookmarks. But that was a lot of fun too. Um, it was I only went for one day, I think. Yeah, only one day. So it's going to be interesting being at a table for 3 days at this one. Very different, but I'm excited for it.
Oh, I'm sure you're excited. Did you bring an assistant or do you have someone to come and help you?
My friend Jenna comes with me to every single event.
Hey, Jenna.
She'll be
That's so
with
sweet.
me, my partner in crime.
Oh, you have to because I've been to these where, you know, like the author is so busy, like signing books and engaging. You need someone to kind of act as like a, for lack of a better word, like a greeter, like, hello, welcome, and, you know, kind of introduce everybody or get them into your booth or their space. I mean, I feel like it takes two people,
Definitely.
especially that event because it's humongous.
Yeah. And also too, like when we had to run out to the car to like get more books or
Mhm.
find things. I'm like, Jenna, help.
Exactly. Yeah. So you're writing the novella, or is the novella already done?
In the process of writing that while writing book 3 because I'm ambitious, I guess.
Oh, you're doing okay. How do you keep your writing projects separate? Because you're still in the same story, but these events go in that one and these events go in this one. And so how do you keep that straight?
I kind of like pick a couple days a week to focus on the novella. So like the majority of the time I'm focusing on the third book. Well, I would say most of the time. I've just started digging into this because I just finished book 2. But the way that I've kind of been approaching it is a couple days a week I will let myself focus on the novella. So like maybe 2 days in the middle or like during the weekend. And then the rest of my time I dedicate to book 3 just because it's longer.
Of
um,
course.
it kind of works in that way that the workday does to kind of break things up. Where like while I'm writing one, I'm thinking about the other.
Okay, now I know why you're an insomniac because one, you don't sleep, two, your brain is always on.
Yes.
Like that does not shut off ever. I feel that like when you're a mama, that's the way it is. Like we got like the kid list, the husband list, the work list, this, you know what I
Yeah.
mean? Like we just have all these lists going all the time in our brain.
Oh yes. Yeah. Maybe one day I'll get all the stories out and it'll be quiet in here, but that's a lie.
I think you would hate it.
I'd be so bored.
For sure. So you're trying to get the novella written and over to the editor by October for hopefully a November 15th anniversary release, which would be awesome.
Yeah.
Do you have a general idea as to when you want that third book to come out?
Kind of. So I started getting very focused on release dates. So like for book 2, I was looking at the calendar and I'm like, okay, like what, not for what my timeline would be, but what would be a good day to release it that like felt right. There's no rhyme or reason behind it. I saw Friday the 13th and I'm like, I want that date. Um,
Yeah.
so probably going to do something very similar for book 3 where I'll look through my calendar and then based on the amount of time I'm anticipating it'll take to write and edit and like go through that whole process. I usually pick a point in time, then look forward, and that'll determine the release date. So in my head, without looking at a calendar, I wanted to get to my editor by like March, April.
Okay.
It gives a little bit more time than my current time frames. But as far as releasing it goes, I definitely want to be very intentional about when it comes out, and especially with the final edits, because that's where it really has to tie up all those loose ends and make sure all of the side plots are wrapped up and all that good stuff. Because the last thing I want is to look at the book and be like, wait a minute, there's a piece missing.
Uh-oh.
So I want to make sure there's a lot of time built in for the editing process for the third one.
That makes perfect sense.
Mm-hmm.
So you're saying a novella, a full book, you'll go back and write the 2 prequels. So will that be it for this series?
No, like I originally thought there was only going to be 3 books, but then I like the world just keeps expanding
Right
in
now
my
there's 6. There's going to be 6.
yeah. The novellas don't count, right? I mean they do, but not towards like a trilogy.
They do count though.
They do. But there's a lot of other stories that I've started to like this fantasy rom-com that I think I've alluded to a million times by now. I've also been like working on that on the side, and like I love the idea so much that I had to tell myself like, okay, no matter what happens after book 3, like that's going to be our next focus, because Afterglow will still be there.
I know. I sometimes wish like I could just download my brain, because you're like, there's so many ideas.
Yeah.
Not enough time.
I like copy paste.
Exactly. Well, there's an author I interviewed, and she does beach reads. But what's so cute is she's created her own fictional beach town. And so similar to fantasy, which I would have never made the connection until now, she can write each story, because with every little shopkeeper in this small town, you know, like the bike rental place and the cafe and all, that's her story. So it's kind of similar to you when you said, where do I stop? I have, you know, three books, 3 novellas, but I can keep on going. And she stayed in that universe. People love it.
That's awesome. That's really fun. I like that.
But it's kind of like something you could easily do. Obviously, it's not going to be beach reads and shopkeepers. But it's so similar in that dynamic that you can just keep living in that world, which is so special to you and the readers.
Oh my gosh, yes. And I'm thinking of a couple other like romance series that I've read that are like the small town or like the beach town romances, and it's like a fake town in a real place, and those are there's like 6-book series that I've read that just kind of keep going, and like I will read every single one because I need to know what happens to this character next.
Exactly.
Like, oh man, we're back in this town again.
Yeah, and so how cool would that be that you create your own like fantasy world, and you just have all these like spin-off stories?
Yeah, it's definitely gonna happen.
You're like, okay, we just brainstormed the next 10 years.
Yeah, right?
Okay, So what's next aside, or what else do you have going on aside from what we discussed? Anything else? Because I feel like you have a lot under your sleeve. Or
I have a whole whiteboard over there with all of my ideas mapped out. Um,
like a poster board?
a whiteboard.
Oh, whiteboard.
Yeah. Yeah, I also have dry erase sticky notes. So they're like little whiteboards that I could put on the big whiteboard and move them around based on where my
That's
where
cool.
yeah. It's something that I really want to do. No timeline for it, but an idea that my friend Jenna and I had together was actually a like holiday horror anthology.
Oh, yeah.
Whether it's just the two of us writing a bunch of short stories or if we pull in other people, but she wrote a one-off short story and like it was so good. And and then she's like, we should just like make an anthology. And like I am so down with that. So that's something that we're going to explore. It would be fun if it happens.
Oh, yeah. I love anthologies because you get like a little snippet of all these different writers and their
Yeah.
style. And then that's how you discover like if they're a writer that you love or not.
Yeah. It's super fun.
So I have two more questions left. Tell everyone where they can find your books and where they can find you online. Where do you hang out?
Yeah, so I'm primarily on Instagram. I am on TikTok and YouTube Shorts, all under author Stacey L.P, but I mostly live here. And you can find my books at the Crafty Bookstore. They're an online indie bookstore, and they have paperback books for indie authors, but they also make their own bookish products like book sleeves and glasses cases and like annotation kits and these wooden like page holder book rest things. I love them so much. So the Crafty Bookstore, you can also find them on Instagram. And yeah, bookshop.org I always like to plug too, because then you can order my book through your favorite local indie bookstores.
Nice. I love that.
And KU, of
And
course.
you. And last question. If you could wave a wand, where would you be in 1 year?
Ooh, doing this full time. For sure.
Okay. So I know that you went back to that and you like your job, but then you would actually go full time, huh?
Oh, heck yeah.
That's
It's
awesome. I think,
so fun. Like, I've always loved writing. So if I could make a career out of this, fingers crossed, one day, hopefully.
well, you said the words and we've manifested out in the world. So hopefully by this time next year, it'll happen.
Yes, I'm down with that.
Stacey, thank you so much for being with me. You're always such a delight to talk to. I wish you the best of luck on your release, and I will post it when I see it. And I wish you even more success at Comic Con June 20th, 22nd here in Houston at George R. Brown Convention Center.
Thanks so much, Gigi. I had so much fun. We'll talk
Me?
soon.
Yes. Thank you. Ciao
Bye.
for now.